And we are back. The median revenue of white-owned firms surpasses that of both Latinx-owned and African-American-owned firms, with white-owned firms having 1.5 times higher revenue than Latinx-owned firms and 5 times higher revenue than African-American-owned firms. Now, in response to the disparity, several stakeholders, including small business service providers, a community college, and a community development financial institution, have come together addressing the wealth gap through what is known as a program named Ascend NYC. Joining me now from the Business Outreach Center Network is their Minority Business Program Manager and Senior Program Manager, John Frias. And we thank you so much, John, for being with us.
Thank you, Darren, for having me here. I'm really excited to be here.
Glad to have you. And when you talk about this gap, I mean, this gap is huge, and you guys are really approaching it and say we have to do something about it. So let's talk about Ascend NYC and its foundation.
All right. Well, Ascend New York City is a really interesting program. It's really unique in that it focuses on existing businesses that are owned by people of color in local communities. It's run by the Business Outreach Center Network. Shout out to Bach. And we partnered up with institutions like the community colleges, and recently we partnered up with Columbia University as well, and other institutions in the community that are really about and have bought in to connecting with local businesses. So for example, we have the Wildlife Conservation Society that runs the Bronx Zoo. We have the Hunts Point Produce Market. We have Fordham University that's a part of. These are all institutions that have really, really bought into building their and diversifying their the way that they engage with the community. What else do I want to say about Ascend?
Well, let me ask this too. When we talk about the Bronx as a borough, the program is focused right here in the Bronx. So,
Yes, it is.
So, give me a little bit about why the Bronx.
So a few years back, the Business Outreach Center Network opened up a center out in Hunts Point to be able to help new and existing businesses develop and grow. And out of that, we created a program that was working with existing businesses to grow and create new jobs to develop the community. And that caught the eye of JP Morgan Chase and New York City, and since then they've been supporting us, and that led to Ascend.
So when we talk about growing these businesses, obviously you want to see business grow. You want to see things be able to go on the uptrend. Give me a little bit about this, because as we look here, and I'm looking at some of the things that you guys have done, the economy, the Bronx economy, it's tough. And yet still you guys have been able to get a hand in on trying to help people to better themselves. What's been the secret sauce there?
Well, as someone who grew up in the Bronx, child of immigrants, Dominican immigrants, I actually watched my father start, grow, and develop his business and hit a lot of pitfalls along the way, make a lot of mistakes. And what Ascend does is it helps those existing business owners that want to grow not make those mistakes by giving them information that they don't really know. And we all know this. If you don't know what you don't know, you can't do what you gotta do.
Right.
So what Ascend does is it teaches them that. And we do this by focusing on 3 M's: management, markets, and money. So what does that mean? All right, any business that's lacking in those 3 things is gonna be stalled. So if you don't have access to the market, you don't get the contracts. If you don't know where they are, you can't get the contracts. If you get the contract and you don't know how to manage that large contract, then you might not get another one. If you don't have the money to be able to support that contract until you get your first invoice, then you might not get another contract.
Right.
So what we do is we fill in those gaps, right? So access to the markets. A lot of these businesses are used to smaller contracts and that don't require the amount of money and the amount of administration involved. And we give them the knowledge that they need to be able to manage that contracts through our management training. Access to the market. They don't know where the contracts are, or if they know where the contracts are, they don't necessarily know how to bid or submit the application, or what kind of infrastructure they need to have in order to do that contract. So we provide them with that kind of knowledge too, and that's kind of support. And then finally, the most important part is access to capital. right? So religiously, we have a problem accessing the capital. And it's, again, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
Most of the time it's because you don't know what financial instruments are out there or even how to access or work those financial instruments to your favor, right? So Bach Capital and other lending institutions that we work with have really innovative products like contract-based financing that not only help build businesses' credit, but also because of the hands-on technical assistance that we provide them, they're able to understand how to manage that money or how much money they need to borrow and how to manage that money across an entire project so that they don't run out of money in the middle of a project and then have to lose out on the project.
You talked about access to capital and access to resources, but if you dig down, we talk a lot of small businesses. I hear from them all the time to say that's the biggest challenge that we have, the access to capital and the access to resources. Do you feel like it's getting better when it comes to the issue of having access to resources?
I think that the resources are there and we just don't know about them and we don't know how to access them and we don't know how to build ourselves up to get them, right? There are lots of times that I see business owners that have saved up a bunch of money, right? So that they can dump it into their business. But really, if you have all that money saved up, that's when you go to the bank to go get the loan that you need to support a project or whatever you got to do. But a lot of the businesses, they're afraid of that. And again, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right. So what we do is we provide that technical assistance to teach them how to use it to their advantage, so that they can borrow other people's money to make more money, and they get to keep their money.
Sounds like a good plan. So I got small businesses might be watching right there, entrepreneurs out there saying, what do I do to tap in? How do I get in?
So we deal with businesses that are existing. We focus on businesses that have been around for at least 2 years of successful operations, have at least 200K in revenue, but we also deal with businesses that are up to 10 million in revenue that are Black and Hispanic owned. So if you're one of those businesses and you want to apply for Ascend, you got to go to www.ascendnewyorkcity.org and fill out an inquiry form. Once you fill out the inquiry form, we'll reach out, we'll set up an interview and figure out if you want to be part of this program or not.
Talk to me about some of the businesses you've been able to touch base with and help.
So we've got a bunch of businesses in the Bronx, but a couple of my favorites we'll talk about is ESC Cabling. They're based out of Mott Haven in the lower part of the Bronx. William Diaz Jr. is a powerhouse. He just scored a $1.2 million contract. And what he does is low voltage cabling. So if you've got Wi-Fi, fiber optics, you can thank him for that. Daniel Garcia, Salsa Catering. They just bought an 18,000 square feet warehouse in Port Morris that they're going to use to expand to be able to deliver 20,000 meals a day, right? And they're about to open up a new line for themselves called Salsa Express. And they're hoping to have a bunch of those places and maybe even set up in some airports. So we've got a lot of businesses that are growing, developing. Of course, there's a powerhouse out in South Bronx called Johnson Security. I feel like Jessica Johnson's been on the show a couple of times. She's also an Ascend grad. And lots of businesses that I could go on for days.
Well, you've given us the numbers, you've given us the names, and certainly if somebody wants to be a part, I think that they know how to tap in. But John, been good to have you, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and it's much needed in our community.
Thank you, Daren, for having me here.
All right. Well, now if you want more information, visit him at his email, jfrias@ascendnewyorkcity.org, or visit Ascend New York City's website at ascendnewyorkcity.org. Encourage you, don't go anywhere. We've got more open, some great guests coming up right after this.